Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Board of Selectmen regular meeting of Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022 at 5 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually in accordance with the COVID rules. I'm just now going to call the roll of the Board of Selectmen and staff who are here this evening. Joe Crisco. I see him. You're here, right, Joe? Yep. Beth Heller is here. Paul Kyriakos.
I'm here.
Thank you. David Lober.
Here.
Thanks. Sheila McCrevin.
Here.
And David Vogel.
Here.
Thanks. Administrative Officer and Director of Finance, Tony Genovese.
Here.
Town Council, Jerry Weiner.
Here.
Jerry Shaw is here, and Media Specialist Boo Ford is also joining us and keeping this live for us. So with that, I will begin the agenda.
And Karen Crosby is also on to take notes.
Oh, okay. I didn't have her listed. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just add that. All right. Thank you, Jerry. I don't see her listed, but I guess she's in the other section there. Okay, sorry. All right, and with that, item 1 on the agenda is discussion of the 2023 fiscal year budget recommendations to be filed with the Board of Finance and action as appropriate. And with that, hopefully you've all picked up your books.
I thought I'd go over the documents, Beth.
Okay, take it first, Tony. Take it away. Thank you.
So we handed out a series of documents with some suggested changes as we do each year. These are by no means, these are just up for discussion and changes that we thought could be, we could recommend to the board. The first document you have is it's a summary. It's called, and it lays out your expenditures, your non-tax revenues, and your mill rate at the bottom. So sort of a nice summary of all the information. That's our, and then in addition to that, I've provided the tax calculations, which is essentially the same information, but it breaks out the grand list. So you can see all the factors of the grand list, including the motor vehicle supplement, regional water company pilot, as well as our reserves we have for uncollected taxes, firefighter abatement, and the elderly tax stabilization. So you can see each one of those on that and how the mill rate is calculated with the grand list. When it comes to the grand list, I get the real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, and pilot information from the assessor. And then I estimate the motor vehicle supplement based on our history. And also I estimate the reserves for uncollected taxes, firefighter abatement, and elderly tax stabilization. We calculate those as reductions to the grand list. That's how those are calculated for in the budget. So a third document is the capital budget. That's our in 6-year capital plan, which has a column for the department request, and then there's a second column called Board of Selectmen recommended. It is our this meeting tonight. You will recommend a for each capital project, you will recommend a number and a method of funding for the Board of Finance. And then there's an estimated revenues section. And finally, all the line item details for each of the department budgets. So those are sort of all of the documents. I know it's a lot of information, but if you have any questions as we go through, I'd be happy to answer them. Or any questions now, I can certainly go through either any of these documents to understand what they are and what they mean. One thing I want to mention on the 6-year capital plan is each one of the items is listed for each department, and then at the end there's the funding sources for each. So there's a key that you have to follow to determine how each one is funded. We can go through that when we get to that document. Okay.
Tony, can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
The larger capital project. There's some numbers are bold and some are not bold. Can you remind us what that means?
Certainly. So If there's no number next to the project, you'll see there's, some of them have numbers and some of them don't. If there's no number next to a project, that means it's proposed to be funded out of the budget, out of tax dollars, out of the current year. So that and typically those are all bolded as well. We try to bold all those so that it's clear that the bolded items are the ones that are being funded from tax dollars. Essentially, those projects come directly out of the mill rate. If there's a number next to them, they mean different things. So a 2 means it's state and federal funds being proposed. A 3 means bonds, borrowing, in other words, and a 4 is other. In this particular instance, there's a few others here. One is dispatch renovation, and the other is the I believe it's the 90-foot diamond in recreation. So when we get to those, we can discuss those other sources of funding. So essentially, you are recommending not only the appropriation for the capital project itself, but the method of funding for that. When we discuss the borrowing number 3, that's, again, this is just a recommendation. This has no, we still have to go through the process of the borrowing, which is a separate and distinct process. So in this particular document, the 3 is only representative of a plan to borrow and does not mean you're actually approving the borrowing of money for that project. Hopefully that's clear. And if you want to actually go ahead and borrow funds for a project, you have to go through, as some of you have gone through probably, a process where it's involved, and it involves authorizations, and it's a very specific process. So this is just for planning purposes.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions for Tony on his beginning remarks?
Tony, with the reserve that's in our budget, where does our contribution to that show up in this budget?
The reserve, you mean the fund balance?
Yeah, our fund balance.
Yeah, so if you go in the revenues, it's called estimated revenues. And
Right.
if you go 1, 2, 3, the 4th section down,
Right?
it says fund balance appropriation.
Okay, so that's
See the 400,000?
Yep.
Right. So if you increase that, you're taking more out of fund balance. If you decrease it, you're taking less. Just as another aside, if you David, if you go 2 lines down,
Yep.
you'll see the Amity surplus.
Oh, yeah.
That's also in there. So my concern is, if we don't get a surplus next year, we could discuss this when we even go through the revenues, but you have a rather large gap in your budget should we not get a surplus in that particular year. So just to let you know, if for some reason next year we don't get a surplus, there's $600,000 you'd have to make up from somewhere else or have automatic tax increase. So, but we can discuss that when we get to revenues. I just wanted to mention that.
So what, Tony, just refresh me, what did we do first?
Typically we go through capital first.
All right. So why don't we go department by department? Does that make the most sense? And ask folks for recommendations. Hopefully you got these on Friday and had 3 days to take a look at it, and today as well. And we'll begin with the Board of Education. This is capital now, not operating. And does anyone have any? Go ahead. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to explain what the changes are from the requested. So, okay, what we did here was first we added the top 2 projects. I'm not sure if those were in the original budget hearing discussions. Those were added later by the Board of Education and removed from their operating budget. We lowered the retro commissioning roof design network wiring item by $13,600. And that's because that was the amount of money they had in there for the roof design. So the concept here is if we're going to replace a roof, you typically would borrow for that because it's a 20, 30-year life expectancy for that. And that's typically something you would borrow for, and so not raise tax dollars for. Similarly, We did the all same for the flooring remediation and the drainage issues, because those are all longer term issues that would need to be addressed, and therefore you would borrow over the life of those items. Those are the changes there.
Due to the fact that the cost is above, what's the threshold, $50,000, it would have to go at minimum to a special town meeting, correct, for approval?
For if you borrowed, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you would have to go to a special town meeting to just to authorize the borrowing, regardless of how much it is, but yes.
Correct.
So Tony, that means the only things that are remaining for sort of pay as you go is the first two items, right? The retro.
Right, we do the retro commissioning, the network wiring, and the oil tank remediation. On the oil tank remediation, we are going to the proposal is to do our oil tank at the same time and to use Public Works to help with some of the labor. So the cost is a lot less than it would normally be. The cost really centers around the renting equipment to remove the tank, professional services to help with filing information, and there's a number of other costs, but
So essentially, if we took the recommendation column here, it's 80,000 for this budget that we're talking about, and the rest of that, the 351 and the 125, would be considered later for bonding. Is that
that's
right?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Anyone else on those? Anyone have any suggestions, comments? Okay, thank you. The next one is the Board of Selectmen. Tony, you want to go over each
Sure.
one, or?
Yep, the Board of Selectmen was, the first item was primarily for planning and design services for sidewalks. As you all know, we received a grant for sidewalk in the, up in Town Hall in this area here. And so we decided to remove that from the budget. The other item is the Town Center Campus Beautification Plan. We left that in here, but we changed the funding source to be considered under the American Rescue Plan funding. So,
Any questions or comments on that one?
And then again, the renovation of the former firehouse is meant to be considered as a
Fine, yeah.
bond.
that's a bond, correct. That would be considered at a later date for a possible borrowing. This just indicates, when you do a 6-year capital plan, you should have in there items that you at least plan on addressing at some point.
Right. So let me ask you though, with the 14,000 that's going for the town center beautification, you're indicating that possibly the ARPA funds, but if not, we embed it in pay as you go?
No, if the ARPA funds don't get approved, then it would just be zero.
Okay.
And
So
where
ARPA
are
funds-
the ARPA funds in our
Right. So
revenue?
it's not bold. It's not bold in that column. Okay. Yep.
Right.
Are the ARPA funds put in our revenue, sheet? Tony?
No, the ARPA funds would have to be a separate process that you would go through to designate the funding. The board would have to do that as part of the grant process. So I just was indicating here that this is a possibility for ARPA funding and not taxes. You could change it back to tax dollars or eliminate it altogether if you so choose. I also don't think that this plan is all inclusive of ARPA funding. In other words, there may be other things you want to use the ARPA funding for that is not in this plan. But we figured there's a few in here that may be worth considering. And there may be others on here that you may want to consider and remove also from the tax calculation. Right.
Okay, Tony, on the $2.1 million for the firehouse, that's not included in our budget. That's a funding possibility. It's a wish list item, correct?
It's not included in the budget. It's simply informing the community and the rating agencies and all outside agencies that this is a possibility.
Possibility, okay.
Right.
I call them placeholders, but.
Exactly, yeah, okay, all right.
You sort of want to identify, it's supposed to identify all of your possible capital needs so that you can get a clear picture of where you're, going in the next 6 years.
Okay, so if there's a possibility for some kind of a grant for that, because we have it already indicated in the budget, then it would be more eligible, say, than if it were not.
Correct, because we're not funding it with tax dollars, so it's not supplanting, because we're not actually raising money
Okay,
to do it. If you had it as tax dollars and then you got a grant, that's called supplanting, and most grants don't allow you to do that.
got it. Okay. All right, I'm good.
Anything else on Board of Selectmen at this point? Capital. Okay, building maintenance.
And their building maintenance, we added the oil tank removal. So there are 2 underground tanks remaining. One is at the school and one is at the country club. This one is at the country club. And we were hoping to have some other way to remove that tank, but because we're running up against a state requirement, we have to remove it ourselves. And it's a newer tank. I believe it was put in not that long before we purchased it. So there's not an anticipation of a problem, but we have to remove all of our underground tanks, which is why it's on there. Also, there's planning and design services for HVAC improvements. That's we're considering hopefully ARPA money for that. That would be for any HVAC improvements we want to accomplish. And finally, the dispatch renovation. This is a recommendation from the dispatch committee. I know it's Paul is a member, and this is to renovate the dispatch center in the police department. The if you'll notice a footnote, there's a footnote down below the department which indicates where the funding would come from under this scenario. So there is $100,000 remaining in the radio project. That was the radio project that we did a few years back that replaced our simulcast radio system. That $100,000 is earmarked for software, for dispatch software at the time of the borrowing, but we have not yet installed any dispatch software. And the feeling of the group was that the renovation is more of a priority. And so this would reallocate those funds for that purpose. The budget for that is $130,000. So there is a $30,000 general fund pay-as-you-go contribution for that.
So if we had gone along with central dispatch, we wouldn't have to do that. Is that correct?
You mean like contracted out? Is that what you mean?
If we had a centralized dispatch, like 3 towns, and had a remote dispatch center.
So if the centralized dispatch was not in Woodbridge, we wouldn't need to do this. If the centralized dispatch is in Woodbridge, then yes, we definitely need to do this.
But if the centralized dispatch was in Woodbridge, we get state funding for that.
We would get state funding probably for equipment. We would get state funding for whether we have state funding for the renovation. I'm not sure. I could look into that, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I know there's funding for the equipment, but I'm not sure about renovations to space. Maybe for the furniture, maybe, but I'm not sure.
And I read, I think it was a figure of $300,000 for towns for upgrading.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big number.
And just because I'll also point out that just because you allocate funding for a project, a lot of times this board has to actually authorize the project, whether it's through purchasing or through some other method. So I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, those are the changes for that department.
Country Club of Woodbridge.
There's no change there.
Right. Fire Commission.
The Fire Commission funding was reduced on card 201 from 40,000 to 20,000. And the portable radios were pushed out to 24 and 25. The thought here was that we were hoping not to have to fund the air packs and the radios in 1 year. So the air packs were more of a priority, and the radios we pushed out a year so we can fund those next year. the original allocation from the fire department was over a 3-year period, so we just combined them in the last 2 years. If you'll notice, the capital funding for this department is 314, 286. Those two are pretty level. So we tried to level those two.
Any questions on fire? Okay, thank you. Human services?
The one change here was for, we pushed out the car for a year. There's departments looking to possibly get a grant for that. And also, we could possibly have one of our cars to replace the existing car. But hopefully she gets a grant. I know she applied for one.
So that's for a sedan to take people to
That's
like
correct.
doctor's appointments, to go on the
That's
Merritt
correct.
Parkway. And they and the number's $35,000. What were they looking for that number? Because that's you can get a car for a lot less.
You could, and that's an option, is to put money in for a different kind of car. But let me look and see here.
This is independent of the handicap van, I think, right?
That's correct.
I don't think it's a handicap van. I thought it was a sedan.
That's
a
what I
sedan.
just said. It's independent of the van.
The handicap van is not until 2026.
Right.
They have that old police car, which is it's failing. I mean, they're putting a lot of money into repairs, and it's got a lot of downtime. That's why they're looking for.
Maybe we'll have
a new
another
car.
car to give them for the next year until year after that.
Yeah, so she doesn't indicate exactly what type of car, but I think she's, just estimating what it might cost. But yeah, there's a number of ways to get vehicles, like Beth indicated, maybe another police car, maybe you could lower that amount, or, and I know she applied for a grant, so. But that's the adjustment there.
Any other questions on human services or comments? Okay, thank you. We're up to information systems.
No change.
Yeah,
The next is the library. So the library item remains, but the funding was changed to the Noyes D. Clark Fund. It's another other. The town has a non-expendable trust that was done for the library. It's called the Noyes D. Clark Fund. Maybe has $200,000 in it. Maybe I'm not sure the exact amount at the moment, but the non-expendable portion, I believe, is 50,000. So at various times when the library has a capital need, we fund it out of that fund. And the fund is maintained by the investment committee because it's a trust.
any comments or questions on that? Here we're up to parks.
No changes.
Nope. Yep.
Nope.
Okay. And then we go to police.
A police department, the speed monitoring equipment was pushed out 1 year. We removed one of the vehicles from 3 to 2 vehicles.
But they got one of those speed monitoring apparatus last year, right?
Yeah, I believe Betsy got some in a grant. She put a few up.
Oh, really? Oh, even
Yeah.
better.
Right.
God, I love Betsy.
We're always trying. We're on the hunt for money. It's
The new ones that were just put up. I think there are 2 of them, maybe.
Yeah, didn't that come with the bicycle
Yeah.
grant?
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
One of them on Beecher Road. I see it every day on the way home. Slows me down. Not that anybody's watching, but it does slow you down. Okay. Anything else on police? That's it.
Yeah, are they leaning towards getting a hybrid vehicles? To start to kick
we've
off this energy efficiency mandate that we have?
We've discussed it. I think he's doing further research on that to see if it would can still accommodate his needs. But I know he's still considering it, and you know.
Yeah, they do have the Ford Explorer hybrids made for the police departments and
Right.
other, they have
Right.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's definitely thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it's a few $1,000s more than the
It's
cars
gonna
that
actually
we're looking
do
at.
more. Yeah,
But save in the long run, though, it would
Yeah.
really,
especially on the idling, right?
yeah, it prevents idling and the engine doesn't wear.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 180,000 miles on my Prius. It's still going strong. I mean, it's incredible. It's really incredible.
Hey, I have 230,000 on my hybrid.
Yeah, there you go.
What kind of hybrid is it?
Whew.
David, what kind of hybrid is it? Is it a
My
Prius?
Camry hybrid.
Oh, Camry. Nice.
Wow.
And my wife's Prius gets 52 miles to the gallon, which is very
Wow.
impressive. Yeah, it's very incredible.
That's
Incredible.
good.
Fill it with a teaspoon. Okay.
I'll mention it to him though,
Yeah.
when I speak with him
Well,
tomorrow.
yeah, we'll ask again, sure.
Tony, do you know if there's any kind of federal funding yet? They've talked about putting federal funding out for conversion of municipal fleet. Is that something that maybe we could look and see if there's a grant or?
Good. Yeah.
We certainly will. I have a meeting with somebody, I hope in the next couple of weeks regarding some other federal money, so I'm not going away. I'm gonna just be very sticky.
They just keep
So-
asking.
Eventually, they're just gonna fund us to make me go away. So my computer just. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got the dreaded ball of whatever it is there, but okay, it's back. Okay, good. Sorry. Okay, so that's the police. Pool and gym. We left that alone, and we have to replace the filter sand. Correct, Tony?
Yep. Correct. It's every
Just a minute.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Tony, can I ask generally about the pool? I know there were some questions on the Woodbridge Board of Ed about the cost of that portion of the building. It's fully in the town's budget. None of that comes out of the Board of Ed?
The town pays for maintenance, a person to maintain it. The
Mhm.
town pays for chemicals and the town pays for a custodian to clean the pool. But the town does not pay for utilities to heat the pool, does not pay for the electricity to light up the pool. But there's and you may be aware, there are a host of charges that go back and forth that we eliminated back many years ago because it was just silly. Because we would spend more time counting charges going back and forth when it's the same pocket. Basically,
Yeah.
it's the same taxpayer. It was kind of silly for us to bill each other for things. So. I
Right,
mean,
so
we-
Yeah,
this
no,
is
I-
all we're seeing in our budget. They're
Like, we
not
plow-
paying anything.
No, we don't, yeah, they don't pay for that stuff, but we don't pay for the utilities, we plow their lots, we pothole repair, I mean, it goes on and on. So.
Right. So for the pool, we had talked about potentially there was going to be some costs involved in a repair, but we're doing current budget for that now, and we don't yet know the future.
Yeah, so we have we're waiting for an estimate from a pool expert. Once we get the estimate, we'll share that with you. And he is going to go through the pool to identify any issues that may exist, including the area where there's evidence of a slight leak. And see if there are any major issues. He didn't see any major issues in his first inspection. He said it was in pretty good shape. There's some cosmetic issues that exist, and hopefully the leak is not a major fix, but we'll find out.
And if we do find out, is there time to put this into the budget? We would handle it
correct.
separately.
Well, we would have a number of ways to do that. We can, if there's enough time, we'd put it in this budget. If there is not enough time, then you'd have to do a supplementary appropriation through that process,
Depending on how much it is,
depending how much it is.
Yeah.
right? Something we could do contingency. It's,
Well, what it's for, he may say,
Sure.
you need to replace this and it's critical, you need to replace that, maybe in the next 5 years, you need to replace this in the next, whatever.
Tony, what's the story with the diving board? I see this is pushed off to 24.
It's probably reaching the end of its useful life.
Okay,
And Brad estimates it's got maybe one more year, and then you need to either take it out and not have a diving board or replace it.
I see. Okay.
And he talked about removing it and just not having a diving board.
Anything else on pool and gym? Okay, thanks. Public Works.
Works has a slight reduction to equipment replacement and a reduction of $100,000 in road construction and a reduction of $20,000 in bridge and waterways reserves. And those are just simply attempts to lower the budget. I mean, there's not any real magic on how we arrived at those figures, but rather to just lower the budget a little. So
And then Tony, the LoSiP funding, that's state funding that we,
state grant funding, correct, that we use for paving each year. Do we get two
is that-
sources? I'm
yeah, is
sorry.
that number guaranteed or that's sort of an estimate at this
It's
point?
an estimate based on what's happening up in Hartford. It's
Mm.
pretty reliable, though. That hasn't been changed in many, many years. So I don't anticipate them changing that. We received two sources of funding from for paving. One is the 65,000. It's a capital grant we get through the capital process. The other is town road aid, which is about 250,000. And so that's in the operating budget. That's just the way the state funds it. And so in total for paving, we have to fund at least 315 roughly. Because we have to, fund enough to cover the grants we receive.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything else on that? Okay. Got three more. Recreation is, let's see. Gymnastics equipment, we kept that in there.
Right.
And then,
Delayed the treadmill.
right, just a year.
Yeah. And then finally, the last adjustment we made was this is after I had a conversation with Alexia, and she and I reviewed the grant that they received, the reimbursement grant. And so $55,000 would be the town's portion of the cow barn preservation and maintenance. So the 104 was for the whole amount.
You're on the Darling House now, right?
Correct. I'm sorry, I skipped to the Darling House. Yes.
Okay, I think recreation was a snap anyway, okay, I was thinking, what are we talking about here? Okay, sorry, Tony. Okay, yeah, we have to pay that portion, as you recall, right?
Well, it was discussed at a meeting a few months back, and that's
And they did get the grant.
they did
they
get
got
the
the
grant,
grant.
and that's the town's portion, correct?
Okay.
So Tony, the remainder is paid by a state grant, or is the Historical Society putting in money as well?
I believe that's for the state grant. They're putting in money for other items, but for this particular
Right.
project, that's from the state grant.
Okay, and that's the only one for this coming fiscal year that we've got on the horizon, right?
That's the only one we're funding for this coming fiscal year, correct?
Okay.
Lastly, waste management.
There's no
Okay.
changes, right? So that leaves you, so just in summary, that leaves you with an operating budget contribution of 1,624,497. You could see that at the bottom of the last page. That's the item that will also be on your budget sheet. So it sort of ties into your budget summary sheet. For point of reference, last year the amount was 978,000. If you look at I could show you if I had my screen shared here. Jerry, could you share my screen for just a moment?
I'm trying, Tony. The list is so long that I can't bring it down. Just hold your horses.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get it down here. Change presenter. Yes, I'm going to change it to you. Did that do it?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Hopefully, can you all see my screen?
Yeah,
So,
yes.
yeah,
Sort of.
okay.
A little teeny ant writing, but it's
Too
okay.
big. Yeah, I'll see if I can make it bigger here.
It's okay.
Is that better?
A little bit better. Yep. Thank you.
So the Board of Selectmen recommended column here is the one that we are discussing. So if you see you have all of the departments on the left. You go down, these all tie out to the operating budgets that were each department we'll review later in the meeting. You'll see the last line, capital and non-recurring, that's the budget that we just discussed. So that's at $1.6 million. And that ties into this mill rate. So basically we have our total expenditures minus these revenues, which we'll discuss later, gives you an amount to be raised by taxes. This is then divided by the grand list to divide this amongst the value in your community, and you get this mill rate. And this is the increase of the mill rate if all the items that were put forth and no changes are made. This would be the amount you would be recommending, 5.42% mill rate increase. This is the expenditure increase. This is the tax increase. And this is the grand list increase, and this is the mill rate increase.
This is what we recommend to the Board of Finance, and they
So
have
you'll be recommending to the Board of Finance some mixture of these items. And so, if you make any changes or whatever changes you decide to make, I can calculate the difference in the mill rate on the spot for you. If based on your, which changes you want to make here.
so the
Yeah,
original
but can
capital.
you do it in your head?
Not fast enough, no.
So the original capital request from all departments, just capital, was how much, Tony? Just
2.7 million.
okay, and we took it down to 1.6
1.6, right?
so far.
So far, right?
Okay.
If there are any other changes, you let me know, and I can certainly.
Now I just have to ask the board if they would like to make any other changes at this point. We do capital first, and then we get to the fun stuff with operating. Any other suggestions at this point? It's tough.
Yeah. Not that I can think of, Beth.
Okay. Anybody else?
Those folks in Board of Finance are smarter than we are, though.
You know, they get the next pass, and they have a couple of passes, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait a minute, Paul, you used to be on the Board of Finance. You're just as smart now as you were then.
Well, now that I'm off, there are a lot, the new people are smarter than me.
Oh, I get it. I see. Okay. I thought you lost IQ points being on the Board of Selectmen. I hope that's not the case.
Wow. Did we get downgraded in that, Paul?
Hey, don't tell anybody, okay?
Going there. I think we're a pretty good board right now. So anyway, okay. So at this point, taking it down from 2.7 to 1.6, hearing nothing else, we have to now vote for that, correct, Tony?
Well, what you could do is wait till the end
Okay.
and then vote at the end after you've made maybe some other adjustments, and then you can see where you are in total.
We might want to revisit capital, is your
You
point.
may want to revisit
Okay.
capital, correct?
How's that for the consensus of the board? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing
Tony,
nothing
just-
else.
Tony, just one quick question. What does 1 mil translate to in dollars?
1 mil in dollars is 1.1 million.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll flip out from that. And next is you operating next, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see, we start department by department. And the first item we have under the Operating budget is Board of Selectmen, and I have some comments on this first. The first department we're going to be discussing this evening is 1110-00, the Board of Selectmen. I'd like to begin with the discussion of the first line item, item 50100 in the Board of Selectmen budget, specifically the first selectman's salary. In our budget presentation to the joint, this is Board of Selectmen presenting to the Boards of Finance and Selectmen. On January 24th, I was challenged by Selectman Lober. His first comment was, I quote, "Notice that the first selectman has given herself a 2.4% raise. I think if we are trying to keep the budget down, that is, how shall I say, a little tone deaf to say the least," unquote. Selectman Lober then went on to say specifically to me, quote, "Those other folks are supporting families on that money. I don't think that you were in that position," unquote. David, I noticed you did not challenge any other employees' increase throughout the rest of the evening.
Well,
I'll finish. Okay.
all right.
I suspect that your comment was based solely on pure politics rather than what was a fair and equitable increase. Why did you only raise concerns about my salary and not the salaries of other women employed by the town? Are you suggesting that the salary increases should be based on breadwinner status? Thus, Betsy Agla, Jerry Shaw, or Tony Polinsky, these are all women in the Board of Selectmen budget. Should their raises be given based on whether or not they support a family? This is the 21st century. I've turned down a raise for the past 4 years. 2.4% of $85,526 is $2,052. Over the past 4 years, by not taking a raise, I've saved our town at least $8,212, not compounded. Additionally, I do not take any benefits. This is nominally a part-time job, but I submit that not only is it not part-time, it has been not based on part-time for the past 5 years. Additionally, over the past 2 years, mostly COVID related, it has been 7 days a week. Just for comparison, the first selectman in Bethany in 2021-22, this current year, received a salary of $89,964, and the first selectman in Orange received a salary of $101,950, and he also has a town car. All mayors and first selectmen work very hard and deserve compensation. I will not rescind the increase request, which is what every other employee is receiving. David, at the very least, I believe you owe me an apology, and pretty much to all women as well.
Yeah, let me respond to that. First of all, I didn't, what's that? Can I respond?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. What I really meant, and I should have been more specific than I was that I think as a gesture towards the town, for trying to keep the budget as tight as possible, you could have foregone that raise. Certainly, if everybody's getting a raise and you're an employee of the town, you're entitled to that raise. And I really have to push back on the sexist remark because I am not. I have a long history of fighting for women's rights and equal pay, and when I ran the anesthesia department at Yale, one of the things that I did was make sure that all my nurses got equal pay. They got the same amount of vacation everybody else did. They got the same benefits that everybody else did, and the same retirement. And I was very vocal on that. So yeah, I mean, that's a mischaracterization. If you were offended, if you took it as personal offense, I do apologize. It wasn't meant that way, but it was meant to sort of I guess just highlight I guess I meant it as a gesture of goodwill, and that's the way I intended it. I guess it didn't come out that way, but that was really my intention.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I won't change that. So if anyone else would like to do something about that, that's up to you guys, but it's going to stay at 2.4 for next year. Is there anything else in the budget? We can go over it line by line. Hopefully you've had a chance so we don't have to go through every single one the entire evening. Town planner in there. We tried to get to a 0% raise. Tony and I worked really hard. We looked everywhere. We did minor reductions here, there, in each line item. But some of the services, for example, the regional services, those are set by outside agencies and we have to pay them and they're set. So we have no choice. And we can continue to look, you know, I forgot what we needed to find, Tony. What was the number? How much?
12,000?
Another 12,000. I
Right.
really think it's important we keep the planner in there. I don't want to fund it over 2 years. We could do that, cut it, you know, to 8 and then do it. That just seems to me not a good idea. So,
That's really the item in there. That's,
yeah, that's the one that's jacked it up.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty, you know,
So we have
Stable.
money from sale of the equipment at the country club that we were going to use for a planner. Wasn't that the case?
we still have some funds, from the sale of the country club. That's correct. I mean, that's certainly an option.
Hmm.
This was for general planning. That was going to be more for the country club planning itself. And that was discussion at the time, but you could certainly make that adjustment, sure.
how much is in there, Tony?
Probably around 15,000 roughly.
Can I just interject something in here? I mean, I have ongoing discussions with my daughter, who's a city planner, and she's very wise in this stuff. And one of the things that she said is that if there's a planning school at Yale, which I believe there is, they are always looking for projects to do. And the graduates need to have internships in order for them. I mean, the potential graduates need to have internships in order for them to graduate. And I'm wondering if we could possibly use that facility to try to get some help with our town.
Is that the, do you remember the Professor Plattis report that Economic Development got? I think that was a similar arrangement, David. And
Yep, I do remember that.
yeah, so we had that report.
I thought we paid for that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. We may have paid actually to have them do that, because I think what happened with that, though, it was over many years. It took quite a bit of time to get, and I don't know if that's the most efficient way to go about it. I think we do definitely need to do planning, so I think I support keeping this in the budget here, and hopefully the Board of Finance will agree with us. I think we should keep it in for now.
Mhm. Well, it's not enough to hire.
We can't put off a couple of years, you know.
It's not enough to hire a full-time planner, but
No.
you could get a, what do they call it? A feasibility study done for that, which would be a blueprint.
Yeah, with a consultant.
Yep.
I do think we need a professional planner. We could have an
Right.
intern perhaps or a Yale person to help or assist.
Mhm.
But I think we really need a professional planner. And I'm not sure for $20,000 we're going to be able to make it, but maybe with the 15 as well.
Yeah. So I think we should keep that number in here for now and really make use of it, because I think we need planning.
Okay. Any other item in this budget that you think might use? I'm hearing none. You can come back to these two if you think of something afterward. This is a really open forum here. Probate court, can't really touch that. It's a set fee, 0% increase as well. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Can you guys hear me out there in TV land?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Town clerk. Couple of little minor changes, and we know that, should elections get more or whatever, we have to fund them. We have to take care of our town clerk and clearly the registrars as well. We'll find money in contingency if we have to. We just don't know what's going to happen with these things next year.
So both of those are more of a guesstimate, and
Right.
you take some risk if you guess too low, but
Yeah. Any comments on town clerk other? Okay. Registrar is the same thing. They went up in election workers. We left it alone, even though it looks like it's they're having, what did they estimate, Tony? Two primaries, two election, or one, two primaries, two elections, or one election, and two referenda. Amity being one of them. I think that was it. Anything on registrars?
Is the canvas included in this? I don't see it. Is that buried in something else here?
It's, yes, the canvas is included in the wage line.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Probably postage as well.
Yep. Which they're doing now annually, the canvas, which is keeping our voter rolls more up to date. Okay. Government access television. Anything on this, Tony?
We didn't make any adjustments there. It was already in at zero.
Yes, those are the things you don't want to touch. We're happy we got zero. A general admin.
So on this one here, we're still refining the insurance item, which is the major item here. So we're still working on that and should have more information for probably definitely by the budget hearing, but maybe by the Board of Finance when they meet in March. I should have better information. This is a somewhat conservative estimate that I'd have to adjust as we get closer to the when we renew our insurance.
Tony, is this all insurance? This is health insurance and like liability insurance?
This is
only the liability.
property, auto, liability, the umbrella, cyber insurance.
Ah.
It includes oil, like we have certain insurances, environmental oil tank insurance, which we're gonna be able to get rid of pretty soon. It includes all underground storage tanks in general. And we
And then
bought
the rest of the insurance is in like the fringe benefits, right?
the health insurance only is in benefits, right?
Great.
Questions or suggestions on general admin? Information systems. Very important.
Yes.
A lot of it is the cybersecurity.
It's mostly all cybersecurity, except for the I would say the software upgrades and the software maintenance are all cybersecurity related. The telephone is just our internet rates or internet. That's mainly all internet service providers at various locations.
Tony, do we have any insurance if we get hacked?
We do. We have cyber insurance.
We do have cyber insurance, okay.
Yes, and they're tightening up on they're tightening up significantly on the what you need to have in place in order to keep your insurance.
Got it, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anything else on info systems? Finance department. Can't really mess with that too much. It's pretty good.
Always try to tweak the banking amount to try to right.
You know, it might go up this year. Maybe our investments.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's terrible. The earning rate we get is just ridiculous.
Oh, almost negative. It's
Like
good for
20
borrowing. It's very good for borrowing. We got to get
It's
our
good for borrowing, you're right. Right.
Gotta get that in before they jack up the rates. I know. Okay, anything on finance? Next is the tax collector.
We made a few minor adjustments here.
Yeah, just a little
I think
bit
just
on that.
1, 2, yeah, 1 or 2.
Tax assessor.
Under the tax assessor had requested a mapping program that would be able to do like a flyover once or twice a year to catch any adjustments to properties that were not on her tax maps. It's about $6,000. This is one of the items that we may consider if we have some money in contingency. We could consider it, but we did remove it from next year's budget.
Put it out maybe to next year, but as Tony said, like if we could fund it this year, it would be good. And it's in a sense, it's spending money to perhaps get some money. If she,
Right.
So,
she finds something.
That's correct.
so Tony, what does that mean, flyover? Does she use a drone or?
No, it's like a company that does the flyovers, and
Oh.
they'll match it to our existing maps and say, oh, well, look, what do you know? This one's got a deck, or oh, wow, how about that? This one's got an addition that is not,
Okay.
you know,
We'd
that
like
sort
to
of thing.
think, we'd like to think there isn't too much nefarious business, but you never know, right? So
Right. Right.
good way to maybe capture some more dollars. So
That's the idea.
yeah. Anything else on that one? Anybody have any suggestions? Okay. Board of Assessment Appeals 00000. I think we're okay with that. Board of Finance, that's pretty much the biggest item is the contingency.
Right. The contingency used to be 200,000 and it was lowered to 175. And now it's at 150. So the Board of Finance reviews this every few years to decide whether they want to adjust it or not. It's been 150 for a few years, but it just all depends on the year. Some years we use most of it, other years we use hardly any.
We talk through that groundhog, Mr. Phil there, and make a decision, right?
Right.
Which no.
That's
Okay.
usually the big thing each year is the snow removal. Yeah.
Anything on that? Okay. TP&Z.
In TP&Z, we eliminated $10,000 that they had in there for a company to come in and help with the regulations to let's see. It's to help with fix inconsistencies, missing tables, and other inconsistencies in issues with the regulations that have been identified since they last changed them. So what we did here was feeling that this is an important item. We would like to fund it this year. We have $140,000 in contingency, and we felt this was an item that they can start on sooner rather than later to fix a lot of these issues and would fund it in the current year. And so we removed it from the budget for next year in hopes that you would approve it in the current year.
Tony, do you know if a project like this would result in a book that maybe could be more digitally available on the website? For example, I've talked to people who have asked questions about what the current zoning says, and they have a hard time sort of accessing the document and finding what they're looking for. Do you know if there's like a possibility that it can go online when it's done?
We can certainly ask Chris to investigate that.
Yeah, because that might be the ideal time to do it when someone's looking at the document again.
Right.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Okay. We're up to Zoning Board of Appeals 00000. Shout them out if you want to do anything. Next is the center. It was a minus 5.6%, minus 5.62%.
That's the payoff of the upgrade to the lighting. That's why that goes down.
Right.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Saved quite a bit on our electricity, just changing the lights to LED lighting.
The former fire station, no changes. The request
Nope.
is the same. Yep, or it was requested. Okay. Police department. Maybe Tony, you can highlight what we did, and then we can ask the board if they have any other
Okay.
modification.
We changed, we dropped overtime down to 125,000 to keep it consistent with the existing budget. We also dropped overtime dispatchers by $2,500 because the budget contemplates adding a dispatcher. So we're hoping that we can reduce that overtime. We also made a few minor changes in some of the repair and maintenance accounts and some of their capital accounts at the end. Those are the changes that we've made. As you all know, this budget contemplates 3 personnel moves. And this is one of only, I believe, 2 departments that do that. The other is the library. This contemplates adding a police officer, adding a dispatcher, and creating an additional sergeant's position. So those are the 3 items that are why this budget goes up by 7%, 7.6%. So
Tony, are we gonna have 4 sergeants now?
we'll have no, we currently have we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this 1, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me. We currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sergeants. This will add a 6th sergeant.
Oh, okay. So that kind of compensates for the lieutenant's position then.
Right,
Right.
and that's correct. That adds additional supervision.
Okay.
That right. That was lost when the lieutenant's position was eliminated.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay. And that's a just for example, that costs it's about $13,000 roughly. That's the cost of adding a sergeant. Because you take a patrol position and you upgrade that to a sergeant's position. That's roughly the extra.
And then, Tony, in addition, in the police officers line, there's a police officer who's stationed at Beecher, but that's in Beecher's budget. We don't see that in this budget, right?
That's correct, right? That's in Beecher's budget, so it does not funded. The SRO at Beecher is not funded out of this budget.
Right, and so that
that
percentage
to a
increase
sergeant's
is just
position.
the increase
That's
they're asking for outside of
Upgrade
that
that to a
position.
sergeant's position. That's correct. That's the 7% increase in the police officer line is for both the
And
additional
then,
sergeant's position,
Tony,
which
in
I
addition,
mentioned,
in
and
the
actually
police
adding a
officers
patrol
line,
position.
there's a police officer who's at
The chief
Beecher
explained in
stationed at.
his presentation.
And
When you add a patrol position, not only does it impact police officers, you'll see down the schedule here, it also impacts holiday pay, longevity, college incentives, and a couple others.
college incentives are part of the contract. Is that what that is?
That's correct, right? And typically when we hire an officer lately, there's usually college, so I usually budget for that because that's typically when we first started, it was not necessarily always the case, but lately it is.
Have we done a police manpower study in the last 10 years?
Boy, I'm not sure. David, I can't recall the last time we had one of those. It's been a while though. It's been
I remember there was one, but I'm not even sure. I was on the board of selectmen, so that was
Long time
probably,
ago,
it
yeah.
has to be that long.
2008.
It's
Yeah.
probably at least 10 years, yeah.
And on the police contract, they're required to have 2 police officers on patrol each shift. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's current
correct.
contract?
Yep. And that the current contracts are all up at June 30th, 2023. So this is the last budget with the existing contract.
Any comments, questions, edits, suggestions?
Tony, does the, when we were down a police officer, does that really increase the overtime expenses?
It does, when you're down a police officer, it does increase overtime. However, if we're not paying an officer for their salary, the salary can help cover, in other words, you have a vacant position. So, right, so usually the salary helps to cover the overtime that's generated out of that. I mean, it's not a one-to-one relationship, but so usually on a short-term basis, but yes, when there's a vacant position, it causes overtime because people have to fill the spot.
So we have a vacancy now, is why we're hiring another officer? Is that the
That's
idea?
correct. That's correct, yeah. An officer just left. I'm not sure when. Do you remember, Beth, when he left?
Most recent one that went to Yale?
Yeah, he went to Yale, yeah.
Yeah, quite recently.
Yeah, and before that, we had a vacancy because we had a sergeant retire.
Right.
So we've had actually 2 this year. And when the sergeant retires, Sergeant Thomas, he retired, it opens up a sergeant's position. So usually what they do is they fill it within a patrol, and then they'll have an exam to hire from within, a testing procedure to hire from within to promote somebody to sergeant. So that's why they just filled a patrol position recently, and they have to fill one more. And then they'll promote somebody to sergeant.
So in addition to the salary for a police officer, we have a benefits package. And what is that in relation to the salary? Any idea?
I have a
Because
little
we
bit.
don't,
Yeah.
we don't pay overtime. We pay straight salary for overtime, time and a half or whatever it is. We don't pay benefits.
Right, so we have, I'm gonna say it's probably. Let's see. Just give me 1 second here. So it depends on the health coverage, what the health coverage is, but it could be anywhere from, 75%, 60%, 70%, 50%, depends on the health coverage, but it's definitely over 50%,
I
could be
guess
as high as 70.
I guess the real question that I'm asking is, does it cost us more to pay overtime or more to hire a full-time officer?
It's usually a balance. It's usually a balance. Generally,
Wash,
it
okay.
costs more to hire a full-time officer than to pay overtime.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so generally you can have some of that. It's not a sustainable option in the long term. But there is some of that we do every year. Yeah. Whenever there's a vacancy, because we don't hire right away.
Right.
So you can save money over many months by not filling a position right away as you go through the process. And so if there's a little overtime, it always covers.
Mhm. I know police officers like getting extra hours, which is up their income.
We have we also have private duty, which is different.
Right.
Right. That's not
That's a
part of
wash.
this.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wash, right?
Do we have our police department, is this comparable to what other towns?
I could tell you that the benefits are comparable. If you look at other towns, it's comparable that the ones I've seen, and we look at other contracts, college, longevity is very common. Holiday pay is in almost every contract because a police officer doesn't get a holiday because they're on a schedule. 5-2-5, it's 5-2-4, whatever the schedule is, they're either working on the holiday or it's their normal day off. So they don't actually ever get a holiday. So in lieu of a holiday, they get holiday pay.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
common in every
Yeah.
police contract I've ever seen.
we, I mean, I think a lot of people noticed, I saw when, the newspaper, the New Haven newspaper did a stories on back-to-back days about, who's paid the most in each town, and Woodbridge and Orange, and the police officers who were paid in Orange were, a lot of them were in their top 10 on their town, as were a few of our police officers. But our police officers were paid quite a bit more. And is that because they have more longevity, or is that just because we pay more generously?
It would have to be a case by, I'd have to look at it in a little more detail. It could have been, some of it could have been private duty. Because it was in total, right? It had overtime in total, but it wasn't broken out between private duty and regular pay. So I'd have to look, and I know I looked at it a while back, and the scales weren't too far off. I mean, they maybe had a little, we were a little higher in longevity, but they maybe had something else. I don't remember it being that different, but that was a few years ago.
Well, it was something that was just within the last couple of weeks on public information that people might have picked up on in the newspapers. And I expect to get a question of that sort, like, why is our security cost higher, or something like that? So, and it's one of our larger budget items, the police, so.
Anything, would you like to do? Got a big lull in the quiet here. Hello.
Well, we just get, I know these budgets have been gone through by Tony in order to get them down to a more reasonable number.
Mhm.
But, just looking at the bottom line of our recommendation at 42.95 mill rate is a scary number,
Yep.
given
Yeah.
how much reaction we had last year.
Right.
And as I'm looking at all these numbers, and I don't feel like I have the expertise to pick on things that are perhaps things that we don't need to have. But the comparison to Bethany and Orange that you made earlier, Beth, and I thought that was really good information on the salaries of their first selectman, but they're doing it with a mill rate of 34.5 for Bethany and 33.25 for Orange. We're already almost, we're 9 points higher than that. So,
The
and
difference in, as you know, the difference in Bethany is they do not have a police department. Number one, that's a big savings. And secondly, in Orange, they clearly have a huge commercial district.
that's right. I understand that.
Right there, that there's two things that we do not have, that or one that we do have that Bethany doesn't, etc. So just throwing that out there. So
Yeah, well,
we have to find another way to raise revenue.
This is, and these adjustments, David, are based on existing service levels. If the board, as from a policy, as the head policy board, has different ideas on service levels, I can certainly calculate those for you. That's more of a sort of a policy question as to, whether certain service levels or certain benefits, versus.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just, it's a very difficult task to look at these numbers and understand that we're already as high as we are.
It didn't just happen in the last year, it's been happening for many years. We have not had real growth. So
Tony, can I ask a quick question? The last couple of items there, capital machinery and capital furniture fixture, is there, well, I guess the recommendation would be that we don't fund either of those things, or are we moving them to the capital budget? And is there any ability to do that?
No, I wasn't going to remove them to the capital budget, but I was going to try to find funds in the existing budget, operating budget, because capital is usually 5,000 or more. So I was going to find funds in the existing budget to to cover that. And
Yeah,
so you don't have to raise taxes for it, because they should be able to cover that in the existing budget.
right. So then I guess that's the only thing, that in terms of suggestions, anything else that could happen with current dollars or end of year funds or anything like that.
So usually what we do is as we get closer to the end of the year with the Board of Finance, that'll be another, month. We'll have a bet, we'll be through the winter. We'll be past that big hurdle. We'll have a good idea on how the police department is doing, if there's any issues in any other departments. And so at that point, I anticipate the Board of Finance will make more significant inroads in that area.
Yeah, is that potentially something, the repair and maintenance on vehicle, is that the kind of thing that could maybe happen in this fiscal year? That's a
Good.
bit of an increase, right?
Yeah.
So little things like that.
There's other things. Yeah, there are other things that we could, sometimes it's capital items.
Hmm.
That can also could be accomplished. The other item that we have, there's other items here we can do it with also.
Thanks.
So I would call out again, anything, have any suggestions for police, or we'll keep going, then we could perhaps come back to things as we get to this. Okay. Scream if I can't hear you. My computer's doing whirly girlies again. Okay, the fire commission. Get what we did here, Tony. A few
We did
things.
a number of reductions in the fire department. There's a few, we brought the salary increases in line with the rest of the staff at 2.4%. We made a couple of minor adjustments to some of the accounts. We did reduce the chief had requested to have part-time maintenance, which is an additional custodian for COVID cleaning. And we again reduced that to the current year funding, which is for 6-month period. That's the 5th line down. That was one of the items. Hopefully we don't have to do the additional cleaning anymore. There's a few items.
Anyone have any?
The one item that the Board of Finance had asked, I think it was Matt that asked, was not paying for the software coverage or part of the software coverage in the radio line. And I know the chief is looking into that to get that information for the Board of Finance. We didn't have it for this meeting, but that's an item that he's looking into.
Tony, what is professional development training? That $30,000.
That is for when they do various types of training at the fire department for, I've got a list here. They do NFPA and OSHA training. They do materials training, hazmat training. They do EMT refresher courses. They do, and they're doing active shooter training out of that line. They sometimes go to, and when they have new personnel, if they have new firefighters, they do funding out of there.
Is that all done locally?
Most of the training, yeah, most of they do it. I think most of it they do there, at least in the job. So they use Valley Fire Chiefs, I think sometimes. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, a lot of it's done locally.
Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 classes, I don't think they do there. I think they go someplace else. But
They go somewhere else for those, right?
but other than the new guys, but I think everything else they do on site. I think.
Yeah.
Tony, the electric buildings, is that also a reflection of paying off for some lighting change? Yeah,
That's correct. Yep.
great. That's wonderful.
Bulbs.
Yeah. That's all. LED lighting saved a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments at this moment on fire? You can come back to anything at any point. Medical services. This was a negotiated thing, but we had how many years of zero, and then there's 1 year after
It's one
that.
more year, I think, of zero.
So that was a good thing. It's for our paramedic, right?
Yep.
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 Okay, animal control. Can't argue with that. Building department. Went down. That was related to good point to the building official, correct, Tony?
Right. We transitioned to a new building official.
I'm gonna keep going unless somebody shouts it out. I promise I'll stop. Public Works. Modest 1.3.
We did a number of changes here, but really the increases on the road, highway maintenance, the road maintenance. There's some,
Tony, there's a big change to buyback sick here.
yes, that's a good question.
Is that a policy change, Tony?
Oh, that's,
Or a
I'd have
digit
to look
missing.
into that.
Maybe there's a digit missing there.
Could be, yeah, it could be. I'll have to look into that. If there's a change to that, I'll adjust it at the Board of Finance.
Okay.
What does highway comprise of? Is it like
Those are the wages. Those are the wages for the highway staff. For the public works employees, to mechanics. Those are the wages. So it's probably should be highway wages or highway salaries.
what about the item that we saw for road maintenance? That's different.
The one down at road maintenance down here, that's for like
The one
pothole, that's for like ongoing maintenance. They do some crack sealing, they'll do some pothole repair, they'll do some if there's like any like road repairs to existing roads.
Are you
That's
asking
where
about
that
the
comes
one in
Asking
capital?
about the capital budget had about it.
That's paving, right, Tony?
Yeah, the capital budget's paving. It's when they pave roads, the new, they put a first coat of paving on, or they do some reclamation. That's more of a capital in nature. The road maintenance in this line is more of an cosmetic in nature. If there's potholes or cracks, or I think he also does guardrail repair out of there. See if I can pull that up. Yeah, he does guardrail installation, drainage repairs, if there's like a drainage issue throughout the year. And then cold patch, hot patch for
Then
potholes.
we have another item that says road maintenance.
That's the road maintenance. Highway maintenance, sand, salt, and materials, the one above it. That's where we pay for the salt for the roads.
Okay.
That's 95,000. That's it's probably, I should probably get rid of that too.
Okay.
And then Tony, we're taking the contracted services down by a little bit. Is that a specific thing or just overall?
Not really. We just sort of adjusted it a little.
Okay.
Based on where we think we can save some money.
Anything else on Public Works at this pass?
Yeah, just one question. The electric street and stoplight, is that all the electricity for streetlights, or what are we paying for there? 33,000.
Streetlights.
That's where it's just an electric cost from UI or whatever that comes right in.
Correct. It's electric bill we get once a month from UI
Wow.
or streetlights.
Now, did we see that go down when we
It did
changed over?
significantly when we changed over to LED, yeah. Used to be
But not this year.
5.
That was a couple
We
years
recouped
ago.
that already. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I
Did I
remember
see-
David Lober went out and looked at them all, remember?
Yeah.
That's right, that's right.
Did
Well,
we have? did we
A
have
couple years
stoplights?
ago.
Yeah, we have stoplights in the police budget? I thought I saw that item in that budget.
We do. The police pays for some traffic lights. The electric bill for traffic lights. You see, they're the ones that blink.
Yep. So they're the blinkers and this is for the
These are
stoplights.
these are for the street lights.
We don't have very many
Yeah, stop.
streetlights. I can't believe it costs that much money for electricity.
You're right, they're only at intersections and it's pretty dark.
It is dark. It's very dark out in front of my house.
You know. Speaking of dark, it's pouring out there.
We do live in the woods.
Yeah, I got that part. Okay. Oh,
A lot of money. That's a lot of electricity. I'd hate to be in a big town where the money, where they got a lot of
That's
light.
after, yeah, that's after we changed to LED. It was probably
no, yeah.
close to 50
Yeah.
before we changed over to LED lights.
Do we even have any stoplights? Well, I got a couple in this town, right? I mean,
Yeah, there's a handful. There's
Johnson and Rimmon.
Johnson. Yeah, that's one.
There's one at Beecher and Rimmon.
Yeah.
I know because I go through them. I mean, I don't.
3 or
walk,
4 on Litchfield,
Right,
couple on Amity.
flashing ones I'm thinking about.
Seymour has one.
Right, yeah.
I mean, do we have an option seriously to get rid of more streetlights? Not the traffic lights, the just lighting up the street. We light up the street all night. I don't know. People have headlights.
What some people do is, what some towns do is they purchase their street lights from the utility, and then you have to use do your own maintenance. It's if you're a bigger town, you may have the ability to do that, but not for us.
Right. But we still have to pay for the electricity. I'm saying it's just eliminate the light altogether so we're not paying electricity.
We have 37% of the population of Woodbridge over 65. They can't see the streets, even with the lights.
they're not driving at night anyway, Dave.
Still driving at night.
Excuse me? Here we go again.
But
All right,
the,
I don't mean to cause a problem. I just wondered if
I think they
it's
we need to-
expensive.
you know, actually, the people down in, down the flat part of Woodbridge, have said they've asked for more lighting because they feel like they have more crime down there, cars being, broken into and things like that. So,
So it's more of a safety issue. Yeah.
We had a request a couple of years ago for a big stoplight, or they wanted a big giant spotlight on, wasn't it Oak Hill Lane or something, Tony?
Right. That's right.
It was alive, and it was a big kerfuffle. There were a lot of folks who came out and wanted it, and some of them wanted it to be done. I don't want to mess with lights
okay.
personally. You guys take it on?
I'll retract all of that.
Yikes. Okay. Waste management. What do we got going on here?
Waste management. I think there's the big issue in waste management is the tip fees. It's trying to balance where we're going to be with tip fees, bulky waste disposal fees, and recycling fees. And our tip fees have gone up, as has our revenue for tip fees. It just all depends. When we originally raised our tip fees, started charging over the scale, our tonnage went down. And then I think so we're at $90 a ton roughly. At that point, so a number of other towns raised their tonnage for their garbage, and we saw an increase. So it's sort of like the market around us raises up theirs, and
They come here.
come here. I mean, so we charge $90 a ton, and I don't think we're getting garbage from outside the town, but I think ours might have been going elsewhere. That's my guess.
So Tony, that's all in the general professional services? Where is that?
No, that's in waste disposal tipping fees. That's how much we pay for transportation and how much we pay in Bridgeport, Resco to tipping is like the tipping floor. I mean, when you tip the garbage onto the floor and you pay by the ton. So that's where we pay for the municipal solid waste, including transportation. The next line is bulky waste. Now, since you've initiated the new bulky waste fee, I'm not certain if our tonnage is going to go down or what's going to happen with that figure. This 85,000 is just based on an estimate as to where we've been this year. So we've seen a slight reduction from the prior year. And finally, recycling is, believe it or not, our amount we pay. We used to get $16 a ton for recycling back when recycling was good. Now we were paying as high as $75 a ton. We're actually paying more to get rid of recycling than we were to get rid of solid waste. That's come down in recent months to maybe in the 40s or 50s. So some of the market's coming back for some of the items that we recycle. So we have a new glass container at the transfer station. We're hoping that that's of the say $50 that we pay for recycling, that's I think $18 impacts the recycling by about that much because of all the glass, at least. So we'll see what happens.
Are you saying we're paying more for recycling than for just general waste?
We were earlier in last year. We were paying a good $12 more per ton for recycling than we were for general waste because the glass is breaking. Right. But we have to do single stream recycling. The state makes you do single stream recycling. It's sort of like you rushed to single stream recycling and there were some consequences of it that were not intended. And the big one was that glass is breaking when everything is crushed together and it's impacting all of the other recyclables. That's one issue we faced.
Right.
Where's the recycling done? What facility? Where's the facility?
It's in Shelton, I believe.
In Shelton?
Yeah, it's Oak Ridge is the name of the facility of the company that hauls it. I think it's in Shelton, yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a private company?
Private company, yeah. We're part of a Bridgeport recycling group, consists of about eight or 10 towns. And the group goes out to contract out to a bid for it every 4 or 5 years. And we're also part of a regional solid waste group. Same thing. We go out to the group goes out for a contract, and they're both coming due in the next few years.
So Tony, it seems like a lot in this budget has to do with behaviors of people in terms of recycling, or if they're going to pull the glass out, we're going to save a lot. Do we have anything, any ability to add or make sure that we're getting enough communication out? Because we're not going to change these behaviors without them, being told over and over. Is that in like general professional or?
We have some, a lot of that Betsy's working on. We have some money in this budget and in the selectmen's budget to perform outreach. A lot of that Betsy is working on. We get a lot of good information from other towns that have already started this process. And so we're hopeful that we can get the recycling of the glass in particular.
Yeah, it seems like that's what if we have to invest in communications and getting the word out, then we might see some savings. Otherwise, that's
the other item that we've talked about is food waste, and it's very heavy. So when it's in the regular garbage, that creates a lot of tonnage also.
Yeah,
the food waste because it's heavy. So
okay.
Have we discussed separating out the recyclables with the trash haulers? I know we've discussed it with people who excuse me, who use the transfer station.
We've discussed that possibility of having the glass separate, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, we've discussed that with it's a little more challenging to initiate that, but we have discussed. I think our first step was to have it at the transfer station, and for people that go to the transfer station, do some outreach there. And I think that's sort of one of the next steps on that is to see if we can see if the haulers will separate out the glass. There's been mixed results in other communities on that.
I seem to recall that my hauler used to separate out papers from glass and plastics and cans. That's my
Yeah.
recollection.
I
Yeah, that was a long time
remember
ago,
that,
before
yeah.
we went to single stream. That was, whatever it was, Bria? It was Bria, yeah, a long time ago.
The glass has to be cleaned, which is another problem.
Yep.
Before you
Right.
sure, it's hard to get, not that I drink a lot of wine, but
And no labels, which is a real challenge.
yes, they
It's
are.
sort of it's an evolving process. And right now, if you have really clean glass, it can be used in manufacturing of like cement and other
Right.
concrete, I guess.
Mhm.
But if it's not clean, it presents problems, I understand.
Labels are awful. I've been putting jars through the dishwasher and trying to peel it off. It's a
You're going to need maintenance for your dishwasher, Beth. That's
don't ask. It's a gloppy. Oh, anyway.
But when you return your bottles to those recycling machines, they just crush them. They don't have to be clean. They don't have to have labels off and
Yeah,
everything.
we need to do more outreach on that, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having a heck of a time.
Hmm. Okay.
So that's waste management. Anything else on that, Tom?
I think the real question is where's the revenue going to go and how's that going to drive the tonnage on the bulky? That's the real question in that budget.
Okay. Building maintenance. I don't think we did anything, did we?
Oh, we did not. No.
They were really, bare bones. And as Brad said to us, there's a lot more he could have done. And we all know, looking at our buildings, there's a lot of things that need to be done that he just hasn't been able to do. So he really worked to get this down. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on that one. Okay. Human Services.
We made some minor adjustments in vehicle maintenance, in clerical, in a number of items, but they're minor in nature.
Anybody have any comments on that one? Okay. Recreation.
We John presented 3 items that he had on his budget. Let's see if I can find those.
One thing was banking. We lowered a little.
Right, banking was one. One was transportation.
Technical. What was in technical?
That's the transportation.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Here we go. He said cuts that we could try to do without that will not hurt children's programs. $2,000 to the fitness center, $55.30 for summer camp transportation, and $1,000 in bank charges. So those are the 3 cuts we did. John was helpful in providing, and the rec commission were helpful in providing us with some adjustments that we could make.
Tony, can you remind us the programs and publicity that's going up a lot? What is that? It's programs and publicity? So is it
Yeah.
must be a new program.
See what that is. That's a that's like a
I can't remember what he said.
Yeah, it doubles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, wasn't that just that they didn't run as many programs?
yeah, it's a COVID related item. I'm just trying to find it.
So
And-
it's probably staffing then, is that right? The
No, it's
programs-
not. It's for programs and publicity is for stuff that they do that they pay for outside people.
Oh, so like somebody else comes in and delivers a program and they pay. It's like a
Right.
consultant fee? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
And
It's
is that, we have the sense that that's just bouncing back from pre-pandemic, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, we don't go back very far. I'm going back, but that's still the pandemic. 2021, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
or 2022 for that matter.
Yeah.
And then again, Tony, with recreation, they bring in revenue though that
Yeah,
that
no,
tends to
They had
offset
a significant increase in revenue this year, right?
Yeah, so this increase in expenditures is matched by an increase in revenue and kind of washes out.
Yep.
Okay, for taxpayers anyway.
It's not a wash, but they cover a significant portion of their budget, probably.
Right, and same as true of pool and gym, right? There's
Close to 30% they cover.
oh, okay.
Any comments on recreation and or pool and gym? Or suggestions or adjustments? Comments, questions? Next is parks. I think we left this one alone.
We did. He came in with a 1%,
Yeah.
made some adjustments to his part-time seasonal account. He being Adam.
Or Matt. Is it Adam or is it Brad? The Parson boys.
He's got it now.
Yep, he does.
I think Brad is buildings and Adam is all others, no? Something like
That's a good-
that?
Brad is building. That's a good way to remember, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good idea. Yeah. Okay, and the Darling House is in and out. They
That's a
reimburse.
wash, right?
Wash.
We pay for the utilities and then we're reimbursed by the Historical Society and the revenue. So that's an in and out.
Moving on to the library.
So we had the original increase was close to 7 or 8%, I think. So we reviewed this with Eric and asked for his recommendation on adjustments that he could make. So he had suggested adjustments to part-time all other, which drops from 225 to 218, and books, movies, and music from 75 to 65. And is there one more here? That's it. Oh, subscriptions. That's the other one. I knew there was 3.
And the library director salary explanation. I remember you told me what it was.
So this is the other, if you remember, I told you there were a few personnel changes to full-time personnel. One was the police, the other was the library. That's the library director's salary. And the library commission, I guess, trying to accomplish 2 things with that. The first is that Eric has taken over all of the bookkeeping responsibilities. We used to have a part-time bookkeeper, which basically did invoices and payroll and other finance-related matters for the library, and then we forward them to the finance department. So that was one thing that he has done to save the town and the library some money. And then just generally, they felt like he deserved an increase to be more in line with library directors of libraries similar to ours. So it's sort of accomplished 2 goals that the library commission had. And this is the funding for that. There would also have to be a process where the personnel committee and the selectmen have to approve of any salary increase for if you the process would be is if generally the union contracts drive the increases for union members. Non-union members, the selectmen authorize an increase in their June meeting, which then would be reflective of increases for all non-union employees. Historically, that's always been what the union gets, but that has to take place by the selectmen. The contracts are, of course, agreed to at a certain date and expire at a certain date, so that does not have to be done each year. If there's any salary increase over and above the, say, 2.4%, the selectmen have to approve that as well for full-time employees. And so this would be one of them. So this is the funding piece. And we're audited every year on this. It's a big part of our audit in terms of our controls to make sure that all salary increases are authorized by the governing body. And that we just don't, give increases out for the heck of it. I mean, that's a very tightly controlled thing at the at an audit level. So
I would
that was,
think
we always have to have a source. We have to always have an approval source, for anything that we give an increase for.
Tony, I seem to recall that the financial arrangement, the financial part of the library budget was taken over by, was it with the Public Works Finance person?
It used to be they had their own person, and then we combined it, and then we eliminated that position also. So
Right.
now there was no one left to take over the work, so Eric had just sort of assumed it, and we never hired the position back at the library. But yeah, it was combined at one time with recreation. Yeah.
Recreation and Public Works, I thought.
Oh yeah, in Public Works. Yeah.
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 And the Public Works person took care of it.
Yeah.
Not anymore?
No, she does payroll for us. That position does payroll. So we eliminate a payroll position in finance back probably 4 years ago, and we split payroll up. Part of it went to Public Works, part of it went to somewhere in Town Hall, and we were able to eliminate a position.
All right.
So Tony, it sounds like there's potentially job description changes that go along with this
For the library
increase.
director, yes.
Right. So do you anticipate that will go through our personnel committee? And then,
Correct.
because I'm afraid people are going to look at this when we get to the public hearing, and then we look at the annual town meeting, and people are going to target in on that. So if do you think that process will kind of go hand in hand, or it won't happen
Usually.
until after?
We usually, I was waiting to see at this meeting if there were any concerns about it. If not, then we would start that process. But usually it's after the funding is approved. But it could happen at the same time.
I mean, I think if we have more information to share with the public to say that the job has changed, the job description
Yep.
has been
Can
added
certainly do that,
to,
yep.
and we need to compensate.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to
Yep,
justify
I
that,
could
because if we do
suggest-
it there, should we do it all across the board? There's lots of positions that we could compare to other towns and then find ourselves in trouble. So
It's mostly because he's doing extra work.
Right.
it
And
sounds
extra
that way, yeah.
responsibility.
My,
Yeah.
my point in bringing it up was just a comment about the fact that we eliminated a position and he ended up taking on some of those responsibilities.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, maybe it's even a job title change too, so we can really signify to people that this is library director and, finance head for library or something like that. Whatever's happening over there. Great.
Okay, just when we get to the preliminary budget hearing, in case it comes up, we all know. Do we have Conservation Commission next, or did I skip one?
No, that's next.
Yep. They need clerical help. That's why the $2,000 is in there. Someone to take minutes and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so that's going to be charged directly to them.
Yep. EMS is charged for it. Who else is charged? Board of Finance is charged.
E&Z maybe, zoning?
Yeah, zoning is charged.
Thinking.
Different ways. It's accomplished different ways by different boards and
And then
commissions.
wetlands might as well, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Pieced out, yeah. Sometimes it's the same person doing,
The staff representative
Right.
sometimes, right?
right,
And so, and that would be that's kind of capped then, right? So if they, let's say they have a lot of long meetings and intricate minutes and that kind of thing, is this 2,000 going to be enough there, or would they have to stop meeting after a certain after they've used up their
No,
clip?
we would just have to keep an eye on it throughout the year, and then if, if it needs a little more, we'd have to fund it.
Okay.
But this should cover a normal year.
Yeah. And they also
Okay.
have this equipment parts. What was that again?
They are, within this budget are a few different items that they'd like to accomplish. One is trail challenge,
Mhm.
which is to get increased visibility for our trails. The second is a boot brush pilot to prevent the spread of invasive species and destroying of jumping worms. That's in the equipment parts. I believe that's what's in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Signage for some signage, and then open space maps presentation materials. But the equipment parts is the boot brush for 450 and trail signs for 400.
Mhm.
Tony, if you hire someone to take notes for a meeting, don't you have to pay them for a minimum amount of time regardless of how long they're there?
It depends when the meeting is. If the meeting's adjacent to the day, then no. So let's say the meeting we end at 4:30 and someone starts at 4:30 and it's an hour long, they only get paid for the hour. However, if they have to come back from home, then it's a 4-hour minimum by contract.
4-hour minimum, okay.
Yeah.
So I know that one of the constraints, once we start meeting in person again, the Conservation Commission used to try to meet, basically it was the same night as the Board of Finance. And they'd have
Finance,
to wait for that room. So maybe some encouragement to switch their night so that they could start closer to 4:30. Is that, if they were to start at 4:30, then they would not incur that kind of extra
They wouldn't
cost.
incur the 4-hour minimum. It would just be if it's adjacent to the end of the day or the beginning of the day, it's just actual.
Yeah, so maybe we can encourage them in
Kinda-
that direction.
kinda depends on people's workday. You know,
Mhm.
getting to.
I was gonna say, I don't think anybody's gonna be able to get there at 4:30,
Right.
because most
Right.
people work.
Right.
So even a gap of half an hour, if they were to start at 5, it's still going to incur that 4-hour minimum.
Correct. It
Mm.
still would incur it, yeah.
Mhm.
And that's not uncommon. I've seen that in many contracts.
Okay,
But you
moving
said
on.
they used to go back to back with some other commissions so that the 4-hour minimum would.
No, they had to wait for the room to clear from Board of Finance.
Yeah.
So that's why they start at 7:30 was their
7:30, right.
yeah,
Right, right.
which is late.
They were always waiting after the Board of Finance meeting. They'd be waiting, yeah.
Okay, Economic Development Commission, nothing to touch there. Stayed at 0 unless someone else wants to do something.
So I guess I have a question because don't they have a staff person doing the minutes for economic development, but they're not paying for it.
Betsy does them.
Right.
So
they're
she
not-
goes to the meeting and she just takes the minutes, but she's salaried, so they don't have to pay.
Oh.
But she goes to, a lot of meetings, so this is not one she was willing to.
I mean, it would be great if we can encourage our commissions to sort of meet jointly sometimes and try to find ways to, I don't know, we're expanding government with our boards and commissions, I guess.
And the next one, inland wetlands, is done by, they do have some questionnaire, but I think Chris does these.
Yep,
if
I
I'm not
think
mistaken, right?
so.
Yeah.
There's one of them that they have to have a transcription done of the whole. They do a hearing, right, Tony?
Sometimes this one they do. They have some money in there. It's the one,
We
2,
have
3,
to
4th
pay
line.
for transcriptions to actually
Yeah.
get the legal stuff. Remember that from a while ago. Anything on inland wetlands from anybody? Whoa, blank page. Is that it for that?
Yep.
Whew. Okay, what's next?
There's another department next.
That is,
Employee benefits.
Yep, okay, it's a different section, sorry. Okay. This is yours, Tony.
So the one number that's still outstanding is the healthcare. We're still refining that number and we're hopeful that'll reduce. The retirement is a number set by the state. We're part of the Municipal Employees Retirement Fund. That's a defined benefit pension that the town is a member of and has been since I think the 50s. And so we have really no way to, the only way to control that is the salaries because it's a match of your salary. FICA and Medicare is a calculation, as you know, which we have no control over based on salaries. And so healthcare is still up in the air. We hope to get that lower. And workers' compensation is also a item that we bid out with our property, auto, and liability. So that we will have hopefully later, and hopefully that'll go down as well. And so really the only open item here is the OPEB contribution, and we've cut that a lot recently. We still have a small contribution there. That's for our other post-employee retirement benefits trust fund. And eventually that trust fund will pay for retiree healthcare. We've eliminated retiree healthcare in all of our contracts, and we have haven't had that benefit since 2017, I think. So we're actually making some good progress there, where a good portion of our active staff does not get retiree healthcare when they retire. So eventually the idea is to have the fund, which has got about $7 million in it. That's also controlled by the investment committee. The interest on the fund will cover the retiree healthcare costs. You can see here it's $992,000 in this budget, and eventually you will not have to budget for retiree healthcare. If you know, we always try to control long-term liabilities, and so we've done a good job at controlling retiree healthcare. That's a long-term liability that a lot of towns have not controlled. And it's essentially a liability you have in the future that you're creating today. So we've controlled that. And debt service is another, which is the next department, which we've also done a good job. We're at a historically low debt service we've been many years. So those two we've done a good job on. Last item is the pension, which we don't have any control over. So some good news hopefully coming up on benefits.
So the retirement for the police department is almost as much as the retirement for the entire town.
Yeah, because police tend to retire younger, and they on average make more in salary than the retirees on the general town. So for those two reasons, the police retirement is always more than the town retirement as a percentage. It's the same benefit level. It's not any different. The plans are identical. It's just that they tend to they're assessed differently by the state. And so they tend to have higher contribution amounts. Like their contribution amount is almost double percentage-wise what the employees of the town are. Not quite. Just
Is that the
because
pattern? Is that the pattern at most municipalities?
Yeah, most municipalities. You always hear of municipalities that have problems with their police pension. I'm sure you've heard a number of stories from other towns that have, funding issues with their police pension. It's not unusual. And in the MERS program, the police tend to, like I said, they tend to retire or younger, and they tend to get paid more than as we've discussed earlier in this meeting. So that's why.
So Tony, you mentioned the OPEB contribution and the health insurance retirees number. They sort of kind of, the more we put into OPEB, the more we're going to see that number in the future going down.
Correct, right?
Does this include, I can't remember if the OPEB also included some portion of teachers at Beecher, or is this?
It includes, yeah, it includes all of their retiree costs as well. It includes the town and the school. But
Yeah,
they do it differently. They have a system where I think not 100% clear on this, but I think they pay they're on a state plan and we pay into it as opposed to them being on our plan. That makes
Yeah.
sense to you?
through the Teachers Retirement Board, is that?
Right, teachers retirement, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess there has been some talk at the Woodbridge Board of Ed about how they're they carry their own fringe benefit costs, and the whole town's costs are not out department by department, but they're all here. But there's also some costs here that we're, at least the OPEB contribution.
It's
Is that-
minor, but
Right.
it also does cover teachers, the OPEB fund.
Yeah, but not the health insurance retirees. That's not
No, that's just
paying
the
out
town.
teachers. That's just town. So it's just the OPEB contribution that there's some portion of that that's covering future teacher post-employment benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have control, this board and the Board of Finance has control over the benefit levels in this budget by
Right.
by your
And
actions.
the contribution to OPEB, right? The Beecher doesn't do a contribution to OPEB, or do they
They do
match those? Yeah, so
No,
it's
they do
the
not.
entire OPEB contribution is coming from us. So,
Right.
yeah, and we control it. So,
But you control all of the benefit levels in this budget.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't control the benefit levels at the Board of Education.
yeah,
So
separately
if you were to put their benefit costs in here, you would have a benefit cost in here that you have no control over.
Mm.
Which I wouldn't recommend.
Right.
Okay, and lastly, I think, right, Woodbridge Board of Education, or have I missed something
Debt
else?
service.
Debt service. Oh, I thought we did that. I'm sorry. We did.
So Tony, the change for the WCC, that's the difference between paying, we started a new form of payment, right?
Yeah, so we converted from
Converted, yeah.
notes to bonds. And when we did that, we used during the bond sale, we received premium, which is essentially money up front, which we used to reduce the principal payments. In other words, we paid down some principal with the premium, which allowed us to have a lower principal payment.
And this is the first year we're seeing that new payment form in here.
That's right. Yeah. No, it was last year's. The current year is the same. See, it's 225,
Yeah,
325. The notes were last year for the notes was 2021, the first column. That's 350.
okay, yep.
Any other questions about debt service or comments? It is what it is.
Mhm. But both the debt service at the town and at Amity are much lower than they were, historically.
And again, this
Doesn't include Amity.
includes-
This doesn't include Amity. This is just the
Right,
town's.
but it does include Beecher. So this is where
Does
they
include
don't
Beecher,
carry
yes.
debt the way Amity carries debt on their budget.
Right. That's correct, right?
Anything else on that? Now we're at the Woodbridge Board of Ed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's see. Tony and I have had a couple of meetings with Dr. Budd and the interim finance director. And at this point, they're comfortable with an 8.92%. And we are confident they are going to continue to work to reduce that even further. I'm not sure if it's going to happen before the Board of Finance meeting next week, but I know they have some ideas. If you want to expand on that a bit, Tony.
I would just say that the difference between the requested budget and this budget at 8.92 were some technical adjustments that Dr. Budd was able to make to the budget, and therefore we were able to reduce it to the amount you have here.
think they're continuing to look for further ways to reduce this.
I think we should encourage them to look.
That encourage is a very good word, and I would say strongly encourage.
Yeah.
I think we've had a couple meetings, and they're going to go back. I think Jonathan and are going to go back to the Board of Education. The main thing is to try to keep personnel where it is. They don't want to cut that.
But they do have some increases in personnel too, that they're in that budget, unless they drop some of those.
Right.
And those increases keep adding to the budget at a very precipitous rate.
This is true. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see that they would reduce their services if they don't add personnel, because that's where they are now. So it's just very disturbing that two budgets that are each 30% of our budget have such enormously high why should our largest budgets also have the highest percentage of increase by and large? Most of these departments are at 1 or 2%. And I know a lot of it is driven by contract, but that's completely unsustainable. It'll break us. The town will be.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've got to get it under control somewhere without sacrificing the quality or the dedication of the schools, to be sure. But I think that
yeah.
I
know he's working. They're continuing to work on this, and I'm confident that there will be more. It will come down further. Is that a correct statement, Tony? Do you think? We can
I think that's, yeah.
And I know Amity, Matt commented at the Board of Finance meeting last week that Amity is also doing the same.
So I just wanted to chime in a little bit to say that certainly, so there's two different things happening with these two Board of Ed budgets. And I think the one that we're seeing with the Woodbridge Board of Ed specifically is they've identified that they need to staff up for TAs, teacher assistants, but they're trying to do it all in 1 year. So I think that one avenue that I'm hoping they're going to continue to explore, and I know Beth has sent this message to them as well, is maybe don't do it all in 1 year. Maybe this is over several years before they get up to the point. They've done a good job of recognizing they think they need those services. Okay, but how do we kind of ramp into that if we're going to be able to afford it? And then the other thing that I would point out is part of the component that's driving the Amity budget is our enrollment. So every additional kid that ends up in the Amity system is causing not just the percentage increase in the whole budget, but we take on a bigger share of that. And when we take on the bigger share of that, we also take on the bigger share of the debt, because the debt is readjusted as well, because the debt is in that budget. So as our enrollment is projected to go down again relative to Bethany and Orange, we're going to see more relief there. So there's really two things operating, putting pressure on the Amity budget. But at Beecher, it's completely the Board of Ed's decision about how they get to the staffing level they want to be at and how they afford to do that. So again, encourage them to look at ways they can trim this further.
I don't think this will be the final number.
So what was the full page advertisement that was in the latest town news about the surplus, the contingency funds on Amity, and how they are very high and have been causing all of the towns basically to overtax their citizens to maintain an abnormally high contingency fund? That doesn't seem, what's the truth of that? What is that?
Yeah, by advertisement, you actually made, that was a editorial or something that was published.
There was a big full page graph and a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so that comes from the Orange Board of Finance. There's a particular member there who has data that he publishes, and I guess he does it in Orange, and I guess he's decided to do it in Woodbridge as well.
Right.
Yeah, but Tony maybe can tell us.
I would say one of my comment, they have given us back in surplus close to, if not more than what increases have been over the last 4 or 5 years. So, the issue that creates is it's an unsustainable, it's not easy to budget if you're gonna get an $800,000 surplus, 1 year, or are we gonna get nothing? And so from our revenue perspective, it's not very, it's unpredictable.
Well,
And they have, given us surpluses. I have the information here somewhere, actually. If you just compare the increases to,
I was quite surprised. Matt brought that up at the
the Board of Finance meeting.
last
Yeah.
last week and said that Terry Loomis actually sent him the data
Right.
each
But that-
year.
But that's entirely, they can easily not return that surplus in any given year.
Right, that's the thing, is
Yeah, it's not the best way to go about this. If they had smoothed it off, not had raised those taxes in the first place, then the issue of them bringing it back to us wouldn't be as difficult for us to handle. Because we can't really budget for that. We can't assume that we're going to get. We can't even assume this year's surplus is coming back. That surplus may be gone by the end of this year, and then we're in
What-
trouble. We can't plan
what-
for that.
If they're budgeting an overly large surplus, where is the incentive for them to be disciplined about staying within a budget? If there's a surplus there, doesn't it make it more likely that they won't worry about how they're keeping costs under control? If I know that there's a $1 million surplus sitting down there, why would I worry about budgeting?
To be fair, I don't think they feel certain that they have that surplus. A lot of it is the function of being self-insured, and so a lot of it is kind of tied up with claims that they're very unsure of. So I wouldn't say the Board of Ed operates on the assumption that they've got a surplus. Certainly this year, I think they're operating on an assumption that they're not going to have that much of a surplus. So yeah, they try to.
So you're saying it's a self-insurance issue primarily?
There is some portion of what they are kind of building into their budget in order to cover potential insurance costs. Yeah, it's different than the town's not self-insured anymore. We don't have to do that.
Tony, what happens to that surplus?
When we get to the revenues, I can show you what exactly we do with the surplus. But we use it for either budget relief, fund balance, contribution, or for paying capital projects, or other capital or other projects or other expenditures during the year, or a combination of all three. We've done all different things with the surplus. Some years we've transferred funds to the Woodbridge Board of Education because they've had a deficit, and we use the Amity surplus for that. Every year we use a portion of it, if not all of it, for budget relief for the following year. And we've also used it to pay for a number of capital items. So if you want to discuss the revenue, I can certainly discuss that with you.
Tony, before we leave the two Board of Ed budgets, the Amity budget, do we have a sense of where they are currently? Does this number reflect where they are currently or where they last reported?
No, this is what they last reported to us.
Okay.
So if they made any reductions to it, I did not reflect it in this number.
Matt did imply last week that they will be reducing it, but we haven't heard any updates.
Yeah, and I want to say March 1st is when they have to forward a final budget, right? Is that right? So it's soon. We'll hear from them soon, maybe before even the Board of Finance meets.
This also goes to referendum, the Amity budget.
And anything can happen in referendum.
It can happen. Yep. Then just before we switch up, capital and non-recurring, do you want to do that next and then?
That's what we did. Yeah, we did that earlier. That was the first thing we did. So that's the total capital
Yes.
non-recurring. Yeah. That's the total of that. 1.6 million.
624,497. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
right, now we're up to revenue, right? So here's revenue estimates. Take it away.
The first section is non-tax revenues. Those are just estimates of what we think. I work with the tax collector to identify what we think we're going to get in prior property tax revenue payments and delinquent interest. And so you could see last year we received 136,000 in delinquent interest, so we budgeted 140. We're not, and then the prior tax revenue is just based on where we think payments will come in. Intergovernmental is from these are the selectmen proposed item is from the numbers from the state from the governor's recommended budget. The only there's only one minor adjustment here, and that's to the education cost sharing grant. That's from 471 to 494. What I did not put into this budget is the governor's suggestion that we lower the mill rate for autos down to 29. So what essentially that would do is we can only cap our auto mill rate at 29 as opposed to 42. So that'll create obviously a revenue loss. And so in order to, you still need to raise a certain amount of revenue. So what that does is pushes up the mill rate on homes and on personal property and on real estate even higher because you have a revenue loss on vehicles. In order to compensate for that shift, the governor's budget indicates that we would get $1.3 million to offset that shift. The last time we went through this process,
We didn't
you
get
can probably guess what they did. They put the cap in place and they took away the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not holding my breath that we're going to actually get any money for this shift. And nor do I know if it's going to even happen. It was just the governor's budget so far. So we have to keep an eye on this and see where it takes us. This could be a last minute adjustment just because they tend to do everything at the end of the session. And hopefully that's before we have to set a mill rate. So, I mean, ideally it adds $1.3 million into the system that you can use to offset their taxes. But the last time they tried this, they took that money away from us and just had us lower the mill. Sheila, you remember, I think you remember going through that. Yeah.
I do, and it made it difficult to compare over the years too, because we had to remember which year the crazy formula was in place.
Right. So that's the only item, major item in the intergovernmental that we have not yet done. Department charges are a series of charges from the departments that they charge for various things. I think the one open item in this is the transfer station. That's at 100,000. And I'm really not sure where this bulky waste fee is going to take us. That could possibly go up. It's sort of a bad time of the year to be doing that, but hopefully by April at the budget hearing, we'll have some spring and maybe we can see a little bit of what the impact that'll have on our revenues or our expenditures. We didn't really make any adjustments there. Interest income all depends on if rates are increased. A lot of our interest income is tied to that. And then other revenues, this is the area we were discussing. This includes two major items. One is the fund balance appropriation, which is at 400,000. And so that's essentially putting $400,000 into the revenues to offset the budget. And the other is the Amity surplus funds. You'll notice that the Amity surplus funds is 611,196. That's from last year. We actually received, let's see, give me 1 second here. $894, $898. So the question is, and this is something that the Board of Finance usually evaluates as we go through the process, as to how to handle that surplus. If you put even 600,000 in the budget and next year we don't get any surplus, that's a $600,000 hole you have in the budget that you have to fill without even raising a single dollar in taxes. That's why, without even a single increase in expenditures, you have automatically starting $600,000 to negative.
Right, and
Which is
and
why
that's
that's
sort of
volatile. It's very a volatile situation, which is why I'm hesitant to increase or change the fund balance appropriation. Because we may
Right.
have to do that next year if we get no surplus from Amity.
yeah. Or if even if the idea of trying to take down that sort of surplus that's embedded in the Amity budget, if the Amity Board of Ed responds and says, "Oh yeah, we should try to take that down," then we're going to see this number just sunset on us going forward.
Well, but at the other end of the side, we won't have to pay it out to begin with. I mean.
Yeah.
It's true. That's true, correct.
Got there by overtaxing us.
Correct.
Right.
It's-
That's
And part
100%
of,
correct, yes.
to be fair, part of what they worry about is when the Beecher Board of Ed is running a deficit, they can come back to the town and get more money. When the Amity Board, if it were to run into trouble, and it did 20 years ago, and they had to go out to a special referendum, which is not guaranteed to pass. So they feel as though, because they operate differently than the town budgets, that's why they want to have a higher surplus going through it. But if they start to adjust it down, this is where we'll have to make a decision. What do we guess for next year? Is that right, Tony?
Well, but we're already guessing.
Yeah, no, next year's okay. It's the year after.
Yeah.
It's,
Hey,
right.
Tony, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a thought. We may or may not get a refund from the Amity budget. But we have this number that we had refunded last year. If we would take that money and put it towards tax relief and plan on borrowing that from the general fund if we didn't get a surplus, with the understanding that we would replenish that general fund with taxes in the following year, then we would hedge our bet. It wouldn't really cost us anything. It would keep the general fund where you want it to be, but it wouldn't. It would guarantee that we wouldn't be paying more taxes than we need to pay.
Do that, particularly if you did like a policy on that, or you had like some sort of policy statement on that, and this was looked at by like a rating agency. I think that would be, that's an acceptable way to handle that.
Yeah, because I think we have enough of a we have enough money in that fund. And for the past 4 years, I mean, it's been 3 million, 2.3, 3.4, 2.9. And it's always been a big number. And we get a chunk of that, at least a third of that.
I'm sure where they are. Do you know where they're? If this year they even are talking about any surplus at all, or
The last year was 2021. There's no number for this year.
do you know, Sheila? If you
So they're actually also talking about, because they have the ability now, the legislature changed some law that allows them to pull 2% of their surplus, or 2%, I'm sorry, of their actual operating budget that is surplus into their capital non-recurring by just a vote of the board. So in the past, it was 1%. Last year, they had the opportunity to put more than 1%, but they held themselves to 1%. They're talking again about whether they should put 2% away. So whatever number they're currently showing as their surplus, which tends to be impacted by that health insurance piece late in the year, so you don't really know where they stand now is not where they're going to stand at the end of the year. But then in addition to that, they might hold some of those funds aside so that they can put into their own capital non-recurring, which technically saves us money in the long run. They don't have to bond for projects like repairing and replacing the air conditioning and that sort of thing. But I don't know where they're going to come out with surplus, and I wouldn't want to fathom a guess. So if we're talking about potentially doing a policy that says we will always sort of hedge a little bit with our fund balance, I don't know that goes towards encouraging them to be a little tighter budgeting wise.
Right.
That might encourage the opposite. So I don't know. It's something that maybe we should talk about a little bit more.
I
So
don't
when they have, just so you know how it works, their surplus for 2021, or the surplus they had ending last June 30th, we receive in the current year and we allocate to the following year. So that's sort of the timing of it.
Yeah. And
Because they send us the funds after their audit is completed, which is in December, so we received the check in January this year.
yeah. The other thing to keep in mind is they don't have a policy at Amity that says what percent gets returned to the town. They can keep all of that surplus. So,
All of it up to 2 point something,
uh,
They
right?
could spend it.
so what to do with their surplus is up to them. Returning it to the towns has just been traditional. So they have an ability to, I mean,
They could
similar
spend
to,
it, right, Sheila?
yeah, they could
They
spend
could
it.
just spend it. They could, you know.
With a vote of the board, they could say, hey, this project that we had in the works for maybe a couple of years in the future, let's go ahead and take our surplus and spend it right now on that. They don't have to return surplus at the end of the year at all. And then they also have that option to put into their capital non-recurring. So, and it's not policy based. So if we move to a policy based decision on what to do and how to handle their surplus, which may have merits, but they're not policy based. So they could change the composition of that board could change. Whoever's the superintendent could change, and they could have a different philosophy, and then that's not going to match with our policy necessarily. So I kind of like the idea that we do it each year. We make a decision each year.
You know, based on the facts at that particular time, that's usually how we handle
Gives
it.
us more freedom, and we can respond to whatever we see happening.
So Tony, this revenue that's in our budget is revenue that we've already received that we receive in January. Is that what you're saying?
The 611,196 you're
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah, we've received that already, correct. Actually, we received 800 and yeah, 890 something.
Okay.
I just didn't put it all in there because as it is, 600,000 is a heavy lift if we get no money next year. I was hesitant to put 894 in, almost
Yeah.
900,000. It's like almost a mill that we would have to cover if we didn't get any surplus next year. So I was very hesitant to do that, which is why I didn't put all of it in there.
So Tony, our option is we could spend it in the year we receive it too, right? And not put it in next year's.
You
Right.
could go through the supplemental appropriations process and spend it. You could put it in fund balance. You could spend it on different projects or whatever.
The thing is, if we start to do that in one year, we have to follow through and do that in every year, right? So that's one of the issues.
Well, typically we'll do it on some capital items that are like not recurring. So you don't have the problem where you have it the next year.
Yeah, because that's the problem they get in at the school. They buy books, for example. They'll buy all the
Right.
library books ahead of time, but then every year they have to buy the books ahead of time. So they
Right.
have to
And
have
so you have
surplus every year for
fiscal
that.
cliff.
Yeah,
Right,
that's part of what drives
So
their thinking.
we try to use it on things that are not recurring. So we have a policy, actually, it's a revenue policy where one-time revenues are not spent on recurring expenses.
Right.
Try to spend them on non-recurring expenses, so you don't have a cliff the next year where all of a sudden you have to raise money for it.
So Tony, the number we're putting in for the budget, that 611,196, sort of, that is going to be applied to overall expenses, and that's why you're hesitant to put a bigger number in there because now
Right.
we're getting more risky. Okay.
Right. That's the main reason. As I was hesitant because it gets more risky, and that's a larger number you'd have to cover. At least if there's no surplus next year, maybe you can increase the fund balance a little to compensate for the fact that you don't have the surplus, and so you don't have a big gap in your budget, and
Yeah.
wean off the fund balance a little. That's sort of the approach I was going to take on that. Eventually, they're going to have, I would imagine, a year with no surplus, and we're going to have to react to that.
Yeah, and we're less tied to their fortunes in that
Yeah.
regard,
Right.
which might be we might want to retain that. Yeah. I think you're muted, Beth.
The cat's mewing in the background, so I'm trying to Sorry.
I
about
had the Jeopardy music going in my background for a while. I don't know if you guys heard that.
that.
Sounded like we were contemplating an answer to something.
Anyway, so I apologize for that. But anyway, we come to the moment in our budget. We've finished our discussions on both capital and operating. So I would again ask if anyone would like to make any changes to any line item or anything here before we go forward. Any comments, questions? I think I don't hear any. So we now come to the point where we have to make the recommendations to the Board of Finance. Is that correct, Tony?
Yep.
In a motion. And the first one is to approve a capital budget. Let me see if I can get this right. Of $1,624,497,000.
And I would just say, and as presented this evening.
And as presented this evening. I will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion, comments? This one. Hearing none, I'll call the roll call. David Vogel,
Aye.
thank you. Sheila McCrevin,
Aye.
David Lober,
Aye.
Paul Kirikos,
Aye.
Beth Heller, aye, and Joe Crisco. Okay, thank you. So now I need the number for the operating.
The operating, I'll read, how about if I read off the numbers?
That's a good idea. And then somebody's
Okay.
taking this down. And
Jerry will take it.
Right, and this will become in a form of a motion. I'll move the following that Tony says.
And operating budget with total expenditures of 55,428,003. Non-tax revenues of 3,761,223. Amount to be raised by taxes 51,666,780. And a mill rate of 44.95.
So that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on this? This is a recommendation to the Board of Finance. My cat's commenting. She's not happy. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, with that, I'll call the question. Joe Crisco. Beth Heller, aye. Paul Kirikos.
Aye.
David Lober.
Aye.
Sheila McCrevin.
Aye.
And David Vogel.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. What other business do we have, Tony?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. I will make
Motion.
a motion. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Somebody just raise your hand. Thank you all. It was a long night. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night,
everybody.
Night.
Stay safe.